Okay. Okay. I want to do it. Just done my breath work so I can be calm, because I have been getting a bit nervous about doing this, which is silly because I'm just talking to my camera and nothing needs to come from it. It's just me and me. I have been traveling. I feel like the only people who are going to see this video are probably my close friends on Instagram anyway. So like, is there any value in me explaining why I don't have any books with me? I'm going to anyway, just, you know, even for future me, in case she forgets. I don't have any physical books with me except for the book that I've just read, which I will talk about in the next month's video. Oh my god, look at me foreshadowing me doing it again. These are all the books that I read in 2022 that I've rated 5 stars. There is one honourable mention at the end that is like a 4, and I'll explain why I've added that into this video here. But to be honest, I don't want to talk about every book that I read. I didn't read as much as my goal was. I read like maybe 30, my goal was 50. So you know what, that's okay. My goal is 60 this year, so I said didn't reach my goal last year, so let's up it, because you've really proven to yourself that you can do it. But I believe I will do it this year. I do actually believe that I will do it. I've already done 2 and we're on the 8th of Jan, so we're good. Okay, so my first book of 2022 that I rated 5 stars was Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. This is to date my favourite romance ever. I would love to reread it to see if that's still the case, because sometimes I think you can probably put a book on a pedestal when you've like just read it and you've had a really good reaction to it. But I think it would still be my favourite. Macy runs into Elliot after 11 years of no contact. They were childhood best friends and also childhood lovers, and she's visibly shaken by the reunion and he's visibly shaken by the reunion, but for very different reasons. She clearly knows why they've not been speaking, but for 11 years he hasn't known why they've not been speaking. And it alternates in timelines. So you have the story of them meeting at her like childhood holiday house and weekend house. She only had her dad and she would go there every weekend on the holidays, and she formed this best friendship with this boy Elliot, and they, you know, they were just in love from the very beginning. Like even as kids you could just tell that like it's going to be a love story. He would go to her house and read to her in their little book nook, and they had this like common love for reading, and it's so wholesome. And then it has that timeline of the past tense and their relationship forming, and then it has the present tense timeline where they've reunited. Macy's now engaged to someone else, and you're like, why have they not been speaking to each other? Like they are perfect for it. They are soulmates. Like, because you're reading them when they met when they were young, and you're like, no, why would you ever not be in contact? So essentially the whole time you're waiting for this bigger reveal of why they've not been in contact. And when I tell you I cried, I was across the road from work when I was at Officeworks and I was crying my eyes out over the reason they were out of contact for 11 years. And his name is Elliot, and when I grew up and like around the same age of Macy at the time that she met Elliot, I had a neighbour named Elliot who I had a big fat crush on. And now different, because I don't actually, me and that Elliot aren't actually soulmates, and he never read to me in a little book nook from memory, but that's fine because it still made me feel like cute. Still made me feel cute. But anyway, that's not the reason it's 5 stars. It's just genuinely a 5-star read. I had to like work after. I had to go back to work. I had to read the ending of this book at Red Rooster, crying over my chips with extra salt, and then go back to work. I should have been allowed to go home after that. That is a worthy enough reason to head home, in my humble opinion. And if a team member had come to me and said, I just finished Love and Other Words, I would have said, you go have a mental health day. You go have a mental health day, you need it. My favourite quote from this book is, admissions make feelings intensify simply because they are given space to breathe. I just love that. I just think that's such beautiful writing. My second 5-star read of 2022 is a very different, completely different speed. It's Know My Name by Chanel Miller. Chanel Miller was known publicly as Emily Doe because she released a victim impact statement online. It was published by BuzzFeed, and it went completely viral. She was a victim of sexual assault, and she went through an entire court proceeding process, and then obviously at the end of a court proceeding, if someone is prosecuted, you are able to give a victim impact statement, and that statement was then used in Congress. It changed laws. It was a huge factor in the Me Too movement, and her name in that victim impact statement to obviously protect her identity was Emily Doe. And she's released this book called Know My Name, where she essentially claims back her identity, and she's like, this happened to me, I am Emily Doe, my name is actually, know my name, it's Chanel Miller, let me tell you exactly like what I went through. And Chanel's abuser, Brock Turner, was only sentenced to 6 months. And the reason this story is so important, like there are a million reasons why this story is so important, but you basically see how it was the perfect crime. She was the perfect victim. She did everything right. There were eyewitnesses to the crime. He ran away. She went to hospital afterwards, and there was physical evidence. Obtained. She went through the whole court proceeding. She was a very intelligent, well-spoken woman, and yet you still see how, despite all of the perfections of this crime and how easy it should have been to prosecute him fairly, she was so re-traumatized by the judicial system, and she was dragged through the mud, and her mental health was completely destroyed. And I cried within 50 pages of this book. I was in lockdown at the time, and I kept having to put it down because I think if you know anyone who's been a victim of sexual assault or abuse of any kind, and or you've been someone who's been affected by that, you would probably have the same reaction as well. It's just a matter of like, Chanel Miller's writing and her wording has plucked thoughts from my brain that I've had that I never really understood how to vocalize. And I'm like, she's amazing. I expect the elements of the book that especially got to me as a reader was Chanel Miller is a big sister, and she very often referenced back to how just like even in the very early stages of her abuse and how she was in hospital and everything, her priority was on making sure that her little sister wasn't scared, and that she was reassuring her sister, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. And I was sobbing at that because I have 4 little sisters, and I just know that that's exactly I just know exactly that that's where my brain would be going, and I'm choking up even saying it now. Incredible writing. To rate this anything less than 5 stars would feel wrong. It felt like a really exhausting read. And I'll say that about a lot of books that I read that are like of this genre, but I stand by the fact that I think if an author is writing a book about something like this, it should feel exhausting to read, because that is how it feels to go through it. And I think it's very intentional that all of the court proceedings feel draining, and you're listening to her constantly be asked the same story over and over and over again, and it's so exhausting. It's like you're asking people to relive their traumas over, and there just should be a better way. There just should be a better way. 5 stars. My favourite quote from this one, and honestly I can't recommend reading enough, because even when I was going through the quotes on Goodreads, I couldn't choose just one quote, but I remember this being one that I read out to like my friends at the time. I am a victim. I have no qualms with this word, only with the idea that it is all that I am. Incredible. She's incredible. That sun is very bright, but I don't have a high production situation happening here. I have my phone leaning up against a wall in my nanny's house, so it is what it is. I don't think I've actually done these in order, because I only read this book a few weeks ago. Well, I know I haven't done these in order because I only read this book a few weeks ago. Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. This could easily become my favourite book ever, I think. But all of these, the reason that if I rate something 5 stars, it's because it's like, okay, you could be one of my favourite books ever. So all of these are going to kind of have that vibe to it. This is a story of 2 London socialites, Magnolia and BJ, and their group of friends. Magnolia and BJ were together before BJ broke Magnolia's heart. You kind of find out about why and what they've done to each other. Magnolia dates other people, BJ gets with other people, Magnolia's only dating other people to try to keep BJ at bay, BJ's only getting with other people to get back at Magnolia, and it is a story of money and dysfunction and toxicity and it is so Gossip Girl. Like, if you love, and everyone says this on BookTube, so I feel like it's a cop-out me even saying that, but I feel like even if I didn't hear that and I had read the book, I would have felt that. Like, it's Chuck and Blair. Like, the fashion element of it, and the only difference is it's set in London, and I loved reading it because I was in London when I was reading it, and it's like, it's beyond just Magnolia and BJ. So like, they just constantly keep coming back to each other, and that's the crux of this story, is that Magnolia dates other people and BJ gets with other people, but they just keep finding their way back to each other. Like, they can't stay away from each other. And something I love about it is that Magnolia there's a lot of character growth from Magnolia throughout the book, where she's learning about herself through these other loves. You know, whilst BJ is like the love of her life, she's having other loves and she's experiencing other situations. And Magnolia's sister, best character in the world, can I just say. Justice for the fake boyfriend, which like isn't a spoiler. Again, she's just dating other people to try to, you know, keep BJ at bay. But justice for him. If you've read the book, or if you do read the book, come back to this and then tell me. Oh my god, bye. Comment down below if you think justice for him. A lot of the critique about these books, or about this book in particular, is that like the relationship is so toxic. You know, young readers are easily influenced, and you know, you shouldn't read this book expecting that this relationship that you're after. First of all, I don't think Jessa Hastings, the author, thinks that they should be together. Like, I think that's the whole point of the book. Like, it's about a dysfunctional, toxic relationship. Like, yes, it's like poetic and beautiful the way they speak about each other. It's also gross and like not okay the way they act towards each other. And so if you are reading this book and you think, oh, I just want to be like BJ and Magnolia, message me. We've got some chats to have there. That's not normal. You should not want this. And to be honest, I was not rooting for this couple, but it was fun. It was so fun to read. I'm escaping. It's escapism. I'm reading. It's not a real life situation. If I was watching my friend Magnolia keep getting back with BJ, I'd be like, what are you doing? What are you actually doing with yourself? Get a hold of yourself, woman. And also, if I was friends with BJ and he was treating Magnolia like that, or Magnolia was treating him like that, I'd tell him to say that, clip him in the back of the head. So just read it though, okay? Don't bloody think that this is a normal relationship, but it's a book. It's fiction. Got very passionate. 5 stars. The really exciting thing about this is Jessa Hastings self-published Magnolia Parks and the next book Daisy Hates, and she's now been picked up by a big publisher who, I don't know if it's a big publisher actually, I just made that up, but it's a publisher, and she has been signed on for a 10-book contract. So there's currently 4 books in this universe. I honestly, when I finished this book, the plot twist at the end, oh, I'm so upset by the plot twist at the end. I closed the book over, I put the book on my heart, and I was like, I literally was in a room with Kaylee and said, I don't want that to be over. Like, I need the next book in my hands right now. And I don't know how I haven't ordered every other book on Amazon, but I've got so many books that I haven't read yet. And I'm traveling, I've got to save my money. So, yeah. But 10 books are going to be part of this universe, including like all the other characters. And it's just, I'm so excited to keep reading. Favorite quote from this, 5 stars, if I haven't said that a million times already. And I love her in the dark. I mean, fuck it. I down and out love her in all spectrums of light, even the absence of it. Oh my god, that's so bright. That is so unnecessary. Is that a sign? Of what though? I mean, that's not really my place to judge. It's so much more fun this time talking about it, because when I was talking about it in Brighton, I was talking about all the books I didn't like as well, and I was like, I've actually had enough of talking about these. Actually, I don't even want to talk about bloody these. I can't even remember any of them. That's how insignificant. If I've read a book that I don't like, gone, out of my head. Actually, I can tell you which one. Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I'm not gonna elaborate because I don't want to drain my energy. The next book is kind of cheating because, well, actually, it's not cheating. I haven't set myself to a certain amount of 5 stars I can give. I can give as many 5 stars as I like. But this is part of a fantasy universe, and my favourite book out of the universe is the second one, A Court of Mist and Fury. It is part of A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J Maas. It is my first ever fantasy that I've delved into, other than like when I was younger and read like Harry Potter and Twilight and stuff, which I'd love to read again actually. But A Court of Mist and Fury is a second one, and it's hard for me to tell you why I love A Court of Mist and Fury, because the whole plot of A Court of Mist and Fury kind of gives away too much about the first book. And in fact, a lot of the first book even I can't tell you about, because Sarah J Maas like jam-packs these books full of twists and turns. And yeah, what I can tell you is that the A Court of Thorns and Roses beginning is essentially like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Feyre, who is the main character, is a human, and there is a human world and a fae or a fairy world, and fairy world, it's spelled F-A-E-R-I-E, so I never know if it's pronounced fairy, and I sound like a dickhead if I say fairy, but you know what? It's just me in my head reading it anyway, so what's the big deal? Basically, she's a human, she hunts for her family, she has to provide for her family, and she is imprisoned by the Fae because she murders one of the Fae. So that's her crime. She murders one of the Fae, she hunts them, and her punishment is being taken to the Fae land to basically be imprisoned there forever. And the person who imprisons her, or her captor, is named Tamlin. He is a fae who transforms into like a beast, a wolf. Is it a wolf? It's been like a year since I've read it, but it's like a beast. He transforms into like a beast. And if you've seen Beauty and the Beast, you can kind of understand where things go, but there is so much more. That is only like the very beginning plot, and then so much more happens. And if I told you what I loved so much about A Court of Thorns and Roses, no, A Court of Mist and Fury, then I'd completely ruin the whole first book. All I can say is, literally, even if you think that you wouldn't be into fantasy, this has romance and war and found family, which is my favourite part of the whole second book. It's just like, and the world building, like there's a court of spring, there's a court of summer, there's a court of the night, there's a court of, oh, it's just like, it is so fun to read. I feel like I know what every character looks like. It probably helps that TikTok has completely decided what every character looks like. Well, not decided, but you know, like there's a lot of fan art and there's a lot of like memes made about it, which it's always on my For You page. Yeah, honestly, I went to this book entirely blind on Bryce's recommendation from work. Told him that I wanted to actually start getting into a bit of fantasy because I was getting into reading a lot more, and he was like, you need to read this series. And I was harassing him. I was messaging him all of the time being like, what is going on? I can't believe this. And I'm like, I love this character. Oh my god, I've got the biggest crush on this character. And he's like, sure you do. We'll see what happens there. And then I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with that character? And oh, it was just so fun. Just trust me and read it. I'm not going to tell you a quote on this one. It's 5 stars, but I'm not going to tell you a quote on this one because it'll spoil it. My favourite quotes literally spoil everything. I even went through Goodreads and like, surely I can find like a secondary quote that I love. But no, all of the quotes that I love from this book spoil the entire plot. So forgive me, just read it yourself and then tell me your favourite quotes. Thank you. Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I thought that I hadn't read this since 2021, but I looked back through my Goodreads and I actually read this at the very start of last year, which I'm so excited about. Not that I have to bind myself to talking about only 2022, but that's the whole kind of title of this book, of this video, so realistically I do. Okay. Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've never read a book from Taylor Jenkins Reid yet that I haven't loved. I think she might be my favourite author. I think it's fair to say that Taylor Jenkins Reid is my favourite author. Okay, this is a story of a rock band in the late 60s who collaborates with a solo artist named Daisy Jones. The band is called The Six, and so they create this band called Daisy Jones and The Six. And it's a story about the dramas and the love and the conflicts they experienced during that time, but it's told from a future tense them who's doing an interview, basically talking about the rise and fall of Daisy Jones and the Six. So it's like you have an interviewer. Imagine 60 Minutes has called upon, you know, Fleetwood Mac and is now sitting all of them down, but individually, not together. And it's asking about the entire story about the rise and the fall. And so you're reading it like, Daisy, Billy, and they're talking about the same things in different, like from different perspectives. And I love that because, like, you know, people obviously remember things differently, feel about things differently. And so sometimes you're reading about the same scene and you'll read completely conflicting information, and it's like an untrustworthy narrator because it's humans, and humans have like ways of twisting stories to suit them, or, you know, manipulating stories to suit them, or just sometimes remembering things differently. And it is just the most beautiful story of soulmates versus twin flames, of music, of art, of drugs, of rock and roll. It feels like so Fleetwood Mac-esque. I'm pretty sure Taylor Jenkins Reid has actually said that they were an inspiration for it. It's also being made into a TV show, which is like the most exciting thing in the world, because there's a lot of the book that actually references to lyrics from Daisy Jones and the Six. I've actually, like a moron, Googled, are Daisy Jones and the Six a real band? Because the story is so, and the interview style of the ride, the whole book is written like an interview. And that, I don't know if I had have heard that first, I don't know if that would have been off-putting for me, but it made the read so quick. It's like sitting down and watching a TV show of your favourite band being interviewed. I was like looking it up because I wanted the music. I was reading the lyrics and I was like, I want to hear this. And the most exciting thing about the TV show coming up is that there's going to now be music to the lyrics that I've read and I loved. So I hope that I love the music. I honestly think that I will. The trailers of the show look unbelievable. The favourite thing I love about this is that it's such a story of women and how they can be empowered in different ways. Like, you've got three, from memory, it's been like a year since I've read it, but you've got like three really strong female characters in this story, and they are really strong for different reasons, and they're really cool for different reasons. And it's so sad. It's in the late 60s, so you've kind of got this feminism movement, and you've got, you know, it's like my favorite era, and you feel like you're in the 60s. Oh, I love Daisy Jones and the Six. Oh, it's just the best thing in the whole entire world. It's so groovy. It's so cool. TJR has 4 books in this kind of universe. I keep talking about book universes. That must be a thing that I'm into. Where you don't have to read any of them in particular order, but they're from the different decades. You've got, you know, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. You've got Daisy Jones and the Six. You've got Malibu Rising, which is like in the 80s, and then you've got a new one, Carrie Soto is Back. I've not read that one yet. And you don't have to read any of them in order. They are all standalone books, but you see certain characters pop up in the different books, which is really fun. And I like that they're all set in different eras, and they're all like iconic eras, and it feels really like you're in it. Amazing. My favourite quote is, and I think if you've read Daisy Jones and the Six, I think this is everyone's favourite quote. Like, I went looking for this quote when I looked it up on Goodreads so I could get it right, and it was the top one. Like, the most people have highlighted that who have Kindles and have read Daisy Jones and the Six. I had absolutely no interest in being somebody else's muse. I am not a muse. I am the somebody. End of fucking story. Sorry, Daisy. My queen? Like, I want Daisy Jones to be a real person who I idolise. I just know if Daisy Jones is a real person, I'd have a poster of her up in my room. Like, I just know that. I just know it so much. Okay, the next one I read for 2022, well, again, not in order, but Beach Read by Emily Henry. I have now read 2 Emily Henry reads, and I love the way that she establishes banter between her characters. I think it's really fun. Beach Read is about a romance author and a literary fiction author who were college rivals. They do have some history, and it's kind of a minimal what you know about that history. It is pretty minimal, to be fair. And they are both in a similar position where the romance writer is in a reading rut. She just doesn't believe in love anymore. Things have happened. He's in just he has a writer's block, essentially. And things have happened in his life to kind of establish that. They both have some, you know, things going on, and they both happen to be at this beach house that happens to neighbour each other. They've not seen each other for a long time. They're both in this situation. They've come away to try to clear their minds, and they come to this like bet where Augustus is going to write romance and January is going to write literary fiction, and in order to do so they're going to take each other out on like weekly dates. They don't call it dates, but like weekly excursions. The excursions for Augustus is dates because he needs to learn to be a romance author, and the excursions for January are to go and interview people who were part of this death cult, which she's going to write a literary fiction about. And as you can imagine, they were enemies, they were college rivals, and they formed this bond with each other by constantly, being together and seeing each other all the time. This is a story of grief, of love, I can't really tell you the multifaceted reasons why either of them are traumatized because it would give away kind of a lot of the plot, but it's beautiful. It's so fun. It's such a fun read. I love the feeling of, like, to me that's like a perfect thing to do, is like go away to like this summer beach house and write, and I feel like that would spark my creativity too. And I love the like element of like looking across the window and seeing the person that you like being there doing the same thing, and it's just beautiful. It's like a rom-com to me. It's like, it's funny, and I don't really have much more to add to the plot of that. It is just like a really fun romance. They are just, two writers who've swapped genres, and that has kind of forced their proximity together. It's not really forced it because they've chosen to do this, but yeah, taking them out of their comfort zones, and you see a lot of character development between both of them. He's really grumpy because of all the things that he's gone through. She was really sunshine, but, she's just like a cynic against love right now, and you're also seeing her point of view and her kind of grappling with the grief of a family member who she has unfavourable feelings towards, and all that entails. So it's got kind of like I like in Emily Henry's book, I like that she usually kind of has two characters who are developing individually, and then they kind of meet each other at this like positive place, or at least like a place where they're willing to work together. My favourite quote in this, because I feel like a lot of us have done this, and take of this what you will. He fits so perfectly in the love story I'd imagined for myself that I mistook him for the love of my life. Mood, Emo. When I was asked recently, and this is my last 5-star read, when I was asked recently, what is your favourite book of all time? It was this book that I read last year that I've recommended to arguably every person that I know. Every woman that I know. I don't need any notes for this one, which is telling. It is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. She is a London journalist and column writer who is an author now, and I will continue to read every piece of writing she puts out for the rest of my days. Moving to London at 25 and reading this book was so cathartic for me, was so healing for me. I felt like a big sister was telling me all of her funny stories in life. So Dolly Alderton wrote this as a memoir. It's a story of her 20s, her late teens to 20s, or even not even late teens, her teens to 20s, and all of the different loves that she's had through those years of her life. And sprinkled throughout the entire thing are stories of friendship, stories of grief, stories of self-development, stories of awkward, messy moments, like where she's so human, and you're reading it and I was giggling out loud the entire time. I'm like beaming even talking about it. I was laughing. I gave it to Kaylee straight after, and there were some parts where she'd be at the bed on the other side of the room to me, and she'd start laughing out loud, and I'd be like, what part? And it felt so human to read this book, particularly when I was in London. It felt so lovely. And my favourite part about this story, and I'm not a memoir girl, I don't really like memoirs very often, because I don't care about your life. I just want to read a fiction. I want to escape when I'm reading a book. But the reason I loved this so much is because it made me feel like every silly little thing, an awkward little moment that I've had, every shit date that I've been on, every dickhead that I've dated, whatever the situations is, just things that we've all done. And I'm 25 now. I'm halfway through that kind of time in my life, I think, like, as in when I say halfway through that time in my life, I'm halfway through my 20s. So like it feels more relevant now than ever to read it. I still read it and thought, I still think she's so cool, and I still think she's so hot, and I still think she's so funny. And even though she's messy and she drinks too much and she blacks out and she's doing stupid things and she's, I mean, prioritizing boys over friendship or friendship over boys, and she doesn't know if she's bloody coming or going, I still thought she was so cool, and it made me look at myself like I'm so cool. Like, I read this book and think, I think she's still really lovable. Like, I still think she's a cat. And so that's what I love the most. But even more so than loving that, I love that every element of love throughout the story, we came back to her female friendships. And at the end of the story, it is dedicated to her female friendships. And like, I don't think that's a spoiler because you get that throughout the whole thing. But as a woman, I think that my female friendships are the most important ships I will ever have in my life. And they are so fulfilling for me. And I mean, I cried reading this. And if a book can make me have like a physical reaction like that, I think that it's always going to be like up there for a possible 5-star. But this will, I would be very surprised if another book ever takes the cake for me. I will read this probably once a year forever. It feels like, especially heading into the later part of my 20s and one day into my 30s, I think Dolly Alderton is the big sister I've never had and always needed. I think it's quite simple actually, based on my favourite thing about the book. And there's a million quotes, I could say. But this one feels most important to me based on that. Nearly everything I know about love, I've learnt from my long-term friendships with women. Shout out, Esso. Esso to the gals. Like, I may as well just pick up the book and start reading it again because I'm going to get hooked on just the quotes from the book. My last honourable mention is only not a 5 stars, in my opinion, because I've watched the show so many times and adored the show. I've consumed so much content about this show. It's ridiculous. I feel like it ruined my reading experience slightly. I still loved this book and I still enjoyed the process of reading this book, but the element of surprise of reading and the element of imagination in reading is the reason I love reading so much. When I read a book, I love the way that my mind can create situations based off of words on a page, and I wasn't given the capacity to do that. I didn't give myself the capacity to do that because I read the book, I watched the show already. So as I was reading it, the scenes were coming up in my head. It's Normal People by Sally Rooney. Connell and Mary, yeah. This is like 4.5 stars and it's only not got that 0.5 ending. It's only, and I might revisit this in a year and go, okay, you silly goose, that's a 5 star. That is a 5-star read. That is a forever favourite read for you. But I just think it's not because I didn't grant myself the ability to have the imagination factor, which is my favourite part of reading. So as I read lines and scenes, because it was done so beautifully in the show, I was seeing the show in my head, which is beautiful. I mean, I will see Daisy Edgar Jones and Paul Mescal in my brain for the rest of my days if I am allowed to. If I let myself have the thoughts that I want to think, that's probably what it would be. It would just be Paul Mescal and Daisy Edgar Jones just looking at me, because they're so good. They're just amazing. They're just my favourite 2 people in the whole entire world. I'm obsessed with Connell and Mary, and I think, but that's, yeah, you can understand. 2 people in Ireland, Connell and Marianne, who met in high school, and they're grappling with this love that they have that just never seems to meet the right timing. Her stories are very much not a plot. Like, what I mean by that is it hasn't got like a beginning to like peak to ending. It's an observation of the human experience, an observation of class, an observation of privilege, and it's a love story, yes, but like they are gritty characters and they are very human, and this isn't like an escapism read. This is a read that makes you go, oh yeah, like our intrusive thoughts are often pretty full on, and learning about what we want in love and in life can be really gritty, and pulling themselves away and gravitating towards other people and always finding this magnetic drawback to each other. They are most comfortable with each other, they are most triggered by each other, and it is just heartbreaking. It will take your heart out, put it on the floor, bounce it around, put it in the basket. Someone will eat it from the basket, swallow it, throw it back up, stomp on it, and then put it back into your body. And I think I feel confident that's the best way I can explain what normal people did to me. Some say they're really unlikable characters. I think that their unlikable traits makes them feel way more human to me, and I feel very protective over both characters. I love them. And so that's why it's an honourable mention in my 5-star list, because normal people as a entity, top of the top for me. I love it, and I believe in my heart of hearts that Connell and Marianne are real people somewhere who found their way back to each other and kept seeing therapists, and now are just in love in a little house in Italy. Oh my gosh, I feel a lot better about this time recording than I did in Brighton. I feel good. I'm obsessed with reading, and I'm so excited that I'm talking about it on YouTube now. And these are all my close friends who watch this, hopefully. And yeah, shuggers. Wait, hold on. I forgot my favourite quote from Normal People, which is arguably my favourite quote from all of these books. I'm not a religious person, but I do sometimes think God made you for me. Now goodbye for real. Now goodbye and God bless.